Good day, everybody. Thank you for joining us. My name is Brad Steele. I'm the Senior Director of Unified Communications at the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And for the next 30 minutes or so, I am part of the NASTD team and a past president of NASTD. If you've never seen these sessions before, you probably haven't heard the story. I apologize if you've seen them all because you've heard it each time. But when I was president of NASTD, I was going through reading the Constitution, and one item popped out to me. Article 1 of Section 2 in the Constitution, under purposes and goals. The second goal listed says that we should engage in programs for the training, education, and development of technology professionals from all areas of state government. Along these lines, I decided to put together some educational videos and work with our corporate affiliate partners. I've been calling them IT 101 sessions, and it is basically videos with our corporate partners to demonstrate or define specific technologies and specific use cases for those technologies for state government. The idea is that we intrigue you and get you thinking about something, and if you need more information, you reach out to our corporate partners, and hopefully they can further assist you with the topic at hand. What we have done is we reached out to our corporate partners and asked for some additional ideas for these 101 sessions. And this week we are lucky to have our partner Zoom on the call with us. So here to represent Zoom is Tommy Gessler, and he is a software developer with over 7 years of experience. For the past 3 years, he has been a developer advocate at Zoom, building Zoom's developer platform and developer experience. Prior to Zoom, Tommy was a founding software engineer at Apostrophe and Techstars Boulder healthcare startup, which was later acquired by Centivo. Tommy lives in Colorado, where he spends his spare time skiing and hanging out with friends and family and learning about new technology. Tommy would love the weather here today because it's a balmy 20 degrees and it snowed 8 inches this morning. So we got the right person on the right day. So welcome, Tommy.
Thanks, Brad. Really excited to be here, and thanks for having me on.
Yeah, so our topic for the day is frameworks for developer products. So this is something that is completely out of my expertise level. I'm a phone guy at heart, networks and telecom. So this is something that will be truly educational for me and hopefully for the rest of the folks that are on board. When we're talking about these subjects, certain things come up and certain keywords come up in conversations. So let's start with just going through some basics. So the first one that comes up is SDK, or a software development kit. So what are they and what are they used for?
It's a great question, Brad. So an SDK stands for Software Development Kit, and they're basically a package of code that a developer has written or a company has written and allows other developers or other companies to use that package or that kit to make solving a problem easier, for example. So one good example is maybe when you're looking at a restaurant online and you're seeing where it's located, they usually have a Google Maps embed. That is an SDK. So instead of the restaurant having to basically code a map system to show where the restaurant is, they just grab a few lines of code that Google provides, right, the software development kit, and they place it on their website, and then it embeds a map.
Awesome. So little cheat sheet for coding. I like it. Why invent the wheel? Why invent the wheel when there's already lots of them out there? I like it. And then, so the other one, and I hear this one quite a bit, when we're trying to integrate phone systems and contact centers with other applications and other things, we hear a lot about APIs. So what are those?
Yep, that's another very popular developer product in term. API stands for Application Programming Interface, and it's basically a way to modify or get data programmatically, meaning you don't have to click a button to get it. You can run a program and it automatically modifies data. And the cool thing about APIs is a lot of different companies and services have them. So you can builds applications that use APIs. And you can also use APIs and SDKs together. And I can share, some examples about that as well. So let's see, what's a good example for an API? I'd say, if you think about the internet and what you can do on the internet, you can do 4 major things. You can read data or look at data. You can post data, put stuff out there. You can edit that data that you've shared or posted, and then you can delete it. And those are the most common API functionalities, is those four functions. I know you love football and like the Patriots. Do you play fantasy football at all, or?
What's funny is I have never played fantasy football, but that's a great analogy because I know that there's a ton of people on here. Okay.
Yeah, so fantasy football or just loving sports in general, NFL, right? NFL has an API where you can get data on the games, and the scores and, when the game is and all of that. And those APIs actually power the applications like fantasy football, or, there's sports betting too, or just all sorts of different, cool sport analogies. So if you wanted to build like a Patriots tracker, season tracker app, you could use the NFL API and get all the Patriots data and, have a cool dashboard of like stats and stuff. So that's another cool thing you can do with APIs.
Well, I see that's really cool that you mentioned that. So the systems that I run at Gillette Stadium, I run all the video boards, and we actually do just that. So we pull from DraftKings.com, we pull from NFL.com, I forget the other one. I forget who the third one is. GSIS is the information system. But we pull all that information so that we can populate out on the boards while the game's going on, all of our fantasy stats and all of the out of town scores and out of town statistics for the other teams. And of course, it's all sponsored content, but it's different things. So some of it is fantasy, some of it is just stats to see who the league leaders are for that week, or those kind of things. So I'm sure that somewhere in there they're using that same API to kind of gather that information.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's really cool. And another funny thing is, if you think about the Red Sox and the Green Giant, they have the Green Monster, they have like the scores of other teams, right? But I think it's like some guy just like hanging the score. It's not digital. But
it absolutely is. There's a little cave back there that the guy goes in, and it's little posters about that big, and he drops them into the slot, just like he used to do.
That guy back there is probably using an API to get all the scores, and then he's manually putting it on. But there's other stadiums. I don't know if Coors Field does it, but there's other stadiums that it's all digital. So, it's pulling like from the API directly and just displaying them for everyone to see. So.
Yeah. And just so those folks out there who want to talk about Fenway Park, we do it digitally as well there. But that green monster will never go away. And so what's the difference when we're talking about an API and SDK? It sounds like they're very similar, but what are the differences between them?
So the main difference is an SDK is usually a package of code that you can use to make something easier. An API is a request, an HTTP request you make to modify data somewhere or get data somewhere.
Okay, so that's why I hear about it with the contact center. So when someone enters in a specific piece of information into the IVR in the contact center, it's going somewhere and it's getting that data or extracting that data.
Yeah, and then an SDK usually is a visual item. So if you think about it, with Zoom's products, the API would be used to automatically create a meeting. And then if you wanted to host that meeting, the visual experience with all the buttons and the videos and the audio inside of your website or application, you would use our SDK.
Okay. So what are the benefits that you get from SDKs and APIs within an application, and when would you use one over the other?
So that's a great question. I saw this in the real world the other day. I was playing a poker game online, and there was a functionality to hear and see the people you're playing with. And so that is a great example of an SDK is the poker site, right? They specialize in making games and like poker experiences. They might not know how to build video and audio connections that can, scale worldwide. So they would use an SDK for that. So it just makes things easier. When you think about like why you would do this, they would have to, the poker, company or website would have to, put time and resources into research and development and code all this and support it, or they could just use an existing solution. So like you said before, not having to reinvent the wheel.
All right. So the real important question is, did you win?
Yeah, I won the first table. So
Nice.
and I got creamed.
So we're not going to see you on the World Poker Tour anytime soon. Okay. So what are some of the challenges that APIs and SDKs can solve for state government for my folks?
That's a great question. It depends on the challenge. You mentioned telecom and contact center. Those are really unique solutions because everyone needs to communicate, and we want to make communication easier. And so now with SDKs and APIs, you can embed those communication tools inside of your own environments. So instead of maybe your users or your people you're communicating with have to learn like another platform, you can basically build it into your own systems so that it's seamless, it integrates better, kind of meeting the use case where it is rather than looking for a standalone application somewhere else.
And so it seems to me that having these available to you makes the ability to make the sites more rich and more involved, right? Give more depth to the website rather than just a list of documents or a list of code, right? Give it some pictures, give it some definition.
Yep, that's right.
All right. So, contrary question to that, what won't it solve for me?
So, I mean, it depends what the challenge is, right? There's always a learning curve when it comes to integrating APIs or SDKs because, every company does it a little bit differently. There are industry standards, but that is probably the main challenge is figuring out like, how can I integrate this? How does it work? What are the steps I need to take? So there's definitely some like upfront kind of education. And what I do at Zoom is try to make that easier for people, making the developer experience easier with instructions, examples, videos, sample apps. So yeah, that's probably the main challenge. But I know I'd love to learn more about like what are the specific challenges are in the industry, and then how they could be solved with APIs and SDKs.
Okay. So as you've been working through this for the last few years and everything, what are some of the changes that have happened recently, and what do we foresee coming in the near future?
That's a great question. Some examples that I deal with every day basically is browser technology. So Zoom has really good video and audio technology, and we're basically like ahead of the browsers. So if you want to, continue, we want to continue building really cool features and experiences and improving audio video technology in our SDKs. So if you put this meeting in your website, and we hosted that on NASTD, like inside of there, right? And people could join. We want to make sure that it's the best experience. And sometimes browsers change things. Sometimes browsers open up new technology, like, hey, Chrome just released a new API that makes video faster. Then we have to change what we're using and update it, but maybe Safari doesn't support that. So it's very fast paced, a lot of changes and a lot of innovation happening. So it's a matter of, keeping up and staying up to date there.
All right. So in kind of doing some research, getting ready for today, there were a couple of things that came up. And again, terms I've heard before, but when we were talking about the different technologies, one of the things that came up was a REST API. And I just figured that was some sort of company or some sort of specific branding or whatever it was. But apparently it's not. So can you tell us
Yeah.
what it is and what that does for you?
So the most common API, or the API system or standard out there, is called REST API. It stands for representational state transfer. And it's basically just a standard where, if you start using an API, whether it be from Zoom or, Stripe or Google, any API out there, Facebook, most of it's going to be REST. And so it's easy for the developer to understand how to use it right off the bat. Some older APIs are something called SOAP, Simple Object Access Protocol, works a little bit differently. But the cool thing about REST APIs is they use this language called JSON, and that's basically the formatting of the data. So if I create a Zoom meeting with the API, I'm going to send it details in a JSON structure. And JSON stands for JavaScript Object Notation. And the cool thing about JSON is it's language agnostic. It can work with JavaScript or Java or C++, Python. It's just a way of sending the data and receiving the data. Okay. So that common piece makes integration really easy because every company uses different coding languages, but the APIs all basically work the same and have the same data structures.
So it's the universal translator of.
Exactly. Excellent.
And one other topic that came up when I was kind of getting ready for this was GraphQL. Is that something that's new, and is it up and coming, or is it just a fad?
Yep, GraphQL is really cool. It is fairly new. It was released by Facebook in used by Facebook in 2012, but released publicly in 2015. It's a way of querying data a little bit differently than the REST approach. Basically, you can pick and choose what data you want rather than getting like a dump of all the data from a REST API. So at Zoom, we don't offer a GraphQL API yet, but you're starting to see companies offer something like that.
All right. So I'm assuming that the APIs and the SDKs, that there are different flavors of them out there. What are some of the most popular APIs and SDKs that are in use today?
That's a great question. If you think about like what do most people do on the internet, and how do they interact? A lot of it is payments, a lot of it's communication, and a lot of it's video, shopping, e-commerce. So some of the most popular APIs out there from companies like Stripe. Stripe basically runs majority of the payments on the internet. So when you buy something, on allbirds.com, you buy a new pair of shoes, that payment is being handled by Stripe. And Stripe makes it really easy to use their API. You would think it's like pretty complex to like take in credit card information over the internet, contact the bank and get the money, and then it's approved, and then, okay, now ship the shoes or whatever. But Stripe makes it super easy. And that's, an example of a great developer product is it's easy for me, the developer, but it does really complex things behind the scene. And they have great examples and great, they have SDKs too. So if you want to make it even easier, you can use an SDK. They package like all this code, and then you can put it in your system and use it. Google Maps is the other one. Being able to embed maps everywhere. Communication, Zoom is a great one. And then YouTube is also really cool. So if you wanted to have a YouTube video, on your own website, you can use their code for that. I wouldn't necessarily call it an SDK, but it's like an iframe, and then you put the code and then it plays. It's basically an SDK. Very easy to use. Those are the main ones I could talk about, cool examples forever, but those are definitely the leaders there.
Well, you mentioned Stripe and shoe shopping, so I guarantee my wife has used that one. When we start getting into programming, start getting into using these things, how long does it take to implement code with APIs and SDKs?
So that's like one of the benefits of using APIs and SDKs is because it speeds up the time to accomplish something. So if I was a site and I wanted to have a payments platform or, accept credit cards so I can ship my shoes, but I also wanted to have, meet with like maybe a salesperson or a customer service person to understand the shoe sizes, right? That's something that Zoom could power. And then the payment Stripe could power. Now, say I'm the developer that works for that shoe company and they say, we want to do this, like go code it. Well, if I don't know anything about how to build video infrastructure, I'm going to have to look at an SDK. If I don't know how to build payments infrastructure, I'm going to have to, either learn how, right? Or go use something that already exists. And obviously as the developer building this, I have a deadline, right? I have, limited resources. So typically I will go out and look at the best developer products out there, like the best SDKs, APIs. How can I make this, how can I develop this fast, cheaply, and get it to market as soon as possible and make sure it works, right? So time-wise, it depends, right? It obviously depends how complex. It's definitely faster than building it custom yourself, but you could get started with these APIs and SDKs, in a matter of days and deploy it and have it all running.
So you obviously have to have the base coding and the base languages somewhere in there, and then you would utilize these APIs to kind of fill in the gaps.
Yep, that's right. Or the other way you can do it is, say your website's using a website build, or your website was built with a website builder like WordPress or Shopify or Wix, Squarespace, Weebly. There's a ton of them out there. Mm-hmm. So what Stripe has done with Google Maps, with Zoom, is building integrations for those sites so that as me, the end user, who dragged and dropped my website together and clicked things and typed things to make my website, I'm not actually coding, but I'm building a website. I can use those third-party tools and integrate them easily in my own site with like one button click. So say I was building a shoe store and I didn't know how to code. I could use Shopify for that. I could, import all the shoes I wanted to sell. The payments is handled over Stripe. If I wanted to have Zoom connect me with like a customer service person to talk about, the colors, etc., I can basically use a Zoom integration for that. So even you could be using SDKs and APIs and not even know, right?
Right. All right. So all of this programming, all of this kind of sampling things from all over, there have to be some security concerns. So what considerations should we take in when working with SDKs and APIs?
That's right. Security is very important. But just like how the REST API system is kind of a universal standard, how JSON is universal standard, there are also universal standard, industry standard security methods. The most popular one is called OAuth 2, and it's a way to sign in essentially securely and grant access to the API you're using or the SDK to then make requests on your behalf. So you've definitely used OAuth 2 before as an end user when you do things like sign in with Facebook or sign in with Google, right? Or sign in with Zoom. That is OAuth 2. It's also when you create an account or sign in without using one of the kind of sign-in providers. That is also an OAuth 2 system. So a good example of this is, say you're the shoe store website and you wanted to have Zoom be able to spin up, meetings on your behalf so that you can talk to the customer service agent. I would click sign in with Zoom, authorize Zoom to create meetings for me to schedule the meeting. And then I would, click approve. And then that Zoom SDK and integration can handle the scheduling of the meeting. So all I have to do now, if I wanted to meet with a customer service person, I click have a question about shoes, meet with an agent, and then Zoom would handle it for you, and then you're meeting.
Nice. Okay. So you're all ready to go. You've kind of decided what you want to do. How do you pay for all of this? There's got to be a cost model here somewhere.
Yep.
How does it work?
That's a great question. Just like the timing one, the pricing, it's going to be way cheaper to use an API and or an SDK rather than building it yourself, because that would cost a lot of money in research and development. So some popular cost models, one is free, which is really cool. There's a lot of free APIs out there. For example, unsplash.com, they're the largest library of free images. So if you wanted photos of, like the beach or the mountains in your application, you could use their API and it's all free. So that makes it really easy. The other one is a kind of price per request model. So if I'm wanting to, I don't have a specific example for this one, but basically like X amount of API requests I make will be priced. Usually they're like pennies, right? So it's that volume that you're paying for. The other one, Stripe, uses a percentage of credit card transactions. So you're not necessarily paying for Stripe, but they're taking a percentage of that credit card transaction. That's how they make money. And then, for example, we have two different price models. One is a minutes-based for our video SDK. So let's go back to that poker example. While I'm in that poker session and while there's that video and audio connection, Zoom is taking Zoom is basically charging by a minute, but it's like 0.003 cents or something.
Right.
So it's and a lot of these API products offer like free tiers. Like Zoom offers like, I think it's 10,000 meeting minutes a month for free, so that I can build it cheap or for free. And then as my business scales, then I can start paying for it. Because right. the biggest barrier is the payment. You don't want to be paying a ton of money up front to develop something that might not fit your needs.
Yep.
The other one is a license-based plan. So if you, in the Zoom example too, if you have, if you're using our meeting SDK, which is like this meeting experience put into a website, the host of the meeting, that license, if you want to go over 40 minutes, that license is being paid for. So there's a lot of different cost models out there, but the most typical ones is the like big volume usage price per API request or price per minute of the system.
All right, so it sounds like we have a pretty good product set that we're able to work with here. I think I have a good understanding of it, but what else do I need to know? If I'm in a state somewhere and I want to start doing this, what else do I need to know? What do I do to get started?
So to get started, depending on what your needs are, you can visit the documentation and then see if there's sample apps or kind of a sandbox environment, so you can play around with things. You won't have to worry about breaking anything because it's you're just playing around with it, testing it. And if you run into issues, you can always reach out to support teams. You can reach out to communities. A lot of these companies like Zoom, we have a developer forum where you can like publicly ask your question to the community, like, hey, I created a meeting, but the time is wrong or something. We can definitely help you with that. Or you can use kind of more general forums like Stack Overflow. That's probably the most popular one. If I have a coding question, I can ask it on Stack Overflow. If I have a question about how to use an API, I can ask it on Stack Overflow. And the developer community is like very, very friendly and very willing to help. So you'll get answers. This isn't something you have to pay for to like get support usually. So it's very, easy to get started. People have also like created YouTube videos and tutorials. So there's a ton of resources out there.
Okay. So that sounds like a pretty good explanation. I've learned a lot. This is the exact kind of subject to me that is on the periphery of what I do. I hear about it, but I don't really understand it. And now I have a much better understanding than I did 20 minutes ago when we started. So just want to say to folks out there, we actually talked about YouTube a couple of times in here because of its use of APIs, and the NASTD site has now spun up its own YouTube channel. So you can watch this video on there along with the other videos that we've done in the past. We hope that people will go on and subscribe to that channel. You can find the link on the NASTD website, nastd.org. And we're looking to get enough followers on there so that we can actually claim the YouTube/NASTD handle on there. So it would be a simpler URL to get to our site. So please go ahead and subscribe to that and watch the videos. And let's start thinking about other content to start putting on our YouTube channel, because right now it's only my face and nobody wants to see that too much. Thank you all very much for watching. And again, thanks to Tracy Bryant for helping set this all up. You all know Tracy, I'm sure. And thanks again to Tommy Gessler from Zoom for helping us out.
Thanks for having me on, Brad.
All right, thank you.